Hey everybody. So we hear a lot about parity in the NHL and how anyone can beat anyone on any given night, no matter, how good or bad the team is perceived to be or where they are in the standings. And that's largely true. As far as professional sports go, I don't think any other league has the parity that the NHL does. And quite honestly, last night was the perfect example of that. Predicting games on a nightly basis in the NHL is nearly impossible. It's really, really hard, and we saw that last night. Now, predicting how things turn out over the course of the entire season is a little easier because generally over the full 82 games, the good teams rise to the top, the bad teams sink to the bottom. There are always a few surprises, but for the most part, over the course of a full year, you have a pretty decent idea of who's good and who's not. On a nightly basis, though, as far as predicting individual game winners, it feels like a toss-up every single time, and last night was a great example of that. So, for those of you that don't know, Hot Take Hockey, another great hockey YouTube channel, very similar to this one. We do a lot of the same stuff as far as he live streams during games and has a group chat, and then we do recorded content about topics from across the league as well. Great channel. I follow that channel very closely, and they have a Discord server with a bunch of people from the channel, and we do game predictions every day. We pick who's going to win. There's a whole bunch of us that do predictions, and we pick the winners of each game every day. And last night, there were 8 NHL games. I picked one of them correctly. I was 1 for 8 last night, and that just shows... Now, maybe I'm really bad at predictions. That could be. But that just shows how many, upsets there were last night and how you really, on a nightly basis, don't know who's going to win. The only game I guessed correctly last night was Nashville-San Jose. I did have Nashville winning that game, and they did 5-2. Every other game I got wrong. I probably should have taken Carolina over Florida. I took Florida trying to be a little bit different, and that backfired because Carolina really took it to the Panthers. And the only reason that the score wasn't even more lopsided than 6-3 was that the Panthers got 2 late goals to make it somewhat respectable. But Carolina dominated Florida for most of that game. Edmonton walks into... I picked the Islanders. Edmonton walks into Long Island, spanks the Islanders 5-2, largely led by James Neal's 4-goal game. Who would have ever guessed that was coming? So that was an L. Winnipeg, in their no-name defense, goes into Pittsburgh and beats Pittsburgh 4-1. That was one of my locks of the week for the Penguins, and the Penguins blew that. So there's another L. Dallas, who hadn't won a game yet this season, goes into Washington and beats Washington in overtime. And I believe the Capitals had a lead in that game as well at one point. So I'm pretty sure that the Caps were up 2-1. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure the Caps were up 2-1 in that game and ended up losing 4-3. So there's another L. Anaheim, who's off to a very, very good, a surprisingly good start against Detroit in Detroit, who's also had been off to a really good start, won their first couple of games. I picked Detroit to win that game on home ice. Anaheim marches in there and wins. So there's another L. The LA Kings go into Calgary and beat Calgary on their home ice. A lot of road wins last night. In overtime, 4-3. And then Boston goes into Vegas, which I didn't think they were going to do. I picked Vegas, even though I'm a Bruins fan, I picked Vegas to win that game. And Boston goes into Vegas and beats the Golden Knights 4-3, led by their top line of Pastrnak, Bergeron, and Marchand, who had a huge night, all three of them. Last night was the perfect example of parity in the NHL and how difficult it is to predict things on a nightly basis. Now, some of these were really good matchups and difficult to predict, for sure. Boston versus Vegas, that obviously could have gone either way and was a toss-up. Even before the game even started, I feel like a lot of people picked both. or thought either team could win that game. But Edmonton going into New York and beating the Islanders on Long Island, that's an upset in my mind. Winnipeg going into Pittsburgh and trouncing the Penguins on their home ice, that's an upset. Anaheim going into Detroit, that's an upset in my mind. Dallas going into Washington and beating Washington when they hadn't even won a game yet this season. I mean, I know Dallas roster-wise is expected to be a really good team this year, but they weren't off to a good start, and then they go into Washington and beat the Capitals. Nights like last night make me want to quit doing predictions because it makes me feel really stupid. But I know I'm not the only one, and I know that a lot of other people who I do predictions with had really rough nights last night as well. Man, it just goes to show you that the parity in the NHL is real. And that anyone can beat anyone. The Kings can still, even though the Kings, I think are one of the worst teams in the league, they can still win games. And they're going to win some games. Teams like Ottawa hasn't won yet, but they're going to win games at some point this season. The other teams near the bottom of the league, I think, that are also at some point going to win. That it's just the way that the league works, is that there are always surprises, there are always upsets, and over the course of the full season, yes, I think usually your top teams end up near the top and your bottom teams end up near the bottom, and then there's a whole slew of teams fighting it out for wild card positions in the middle. But on a nightly basis, as far as night by night goes, it's really, really hard to predict the NHL, and you just really don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's great for the league. It makes it fun to watch. It makes every game meaningful, and you can't go into a game thinking that this game's over before it even begins, the way you do with the NFL and some MLB games and things like that. And I'm really glad that the league is the way that it is, with anyone beating anyone. It's just it's so hard to predict. It's really fun though to see how who ends up winning and who ends up not, but it is really, really difficult to predict. So, yeah, I saw that I went 1 for 8 with my predictions last night, and I was just like, wow, that is the epitome of, the prime example of how much parity the NHL has and how difficult it is to predict overall. So, that's about it. With that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.